Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mindy Berardini. I'm a tech recruiter at Pixar, and I support RenderMan, software research development and systems. Little emojis, that's fun. Hopefully you're here because you want to learn more about the various career pathways in technology at RenderMan. And we're here to give you a little behind the scenes look with some of our technologists. Just to set the stage a little bit, hopefully you've been learning a lot about RenderMan, and this is kind of your last stop of this fair. But RenderMan is an award-winning proprietary software that was developed 30 years ago for Pixar's animated films. Over the years, it's become used widely in the industry, animation and visual effects. RenderMan has some talented teams in Seattle, London, and Emeryville that supported and developed the technology. Currently, we have a software engineering position open on the RenderMan team in Seattle, and Pixar also has a lot of software engineering jobs to explore. So take a look at at pixar.com/careers and kind of explore those positions and see if anything fits your skills and expertise. To kick some things off, we're going to play a little short video about all the cool stuff that RenderMan does, and then we'll get started with the panel. All right. So now I have our technologists joining me on the stage and waiting for one more. There we go. So we're going to get kicked off and just have you guys do a little bit of an intro to tell us about yourselves. So tell us a little bit about your background. What school did you attend and what was your major? How long have you been at RenderMan? And what do you do at RenderMan? So Sarah, do you want to get started?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Sarah Hutchinson. I've been with the RenderMan team for over 6 years now. I work on the RenderMan for Katana plugin. And I do customer support for people who use the plugin, and I been doing work with the USD integration lately as well. So I went to school for computer science and electrical engineering at the University of Washington, and yeah, that's what I did before I joined RenderMan.
Super cool.
Hi everyone, my name is Meghana. I'll start off with a little bit on background. Growing up, I always loved watching TV and movies, and when I was young, they always influenced all of my career choices. So like Scooby-Doo and like Kim Possible made me want to become a super cool detective and crime fighter, and like Bill Nye made me become a chemist. But then like back in the day, you know, when movie credits are just credits and no extra scenes at the end, I always used to sit till the end to just read all the job titles that were there. And I always used to wonder, could I imagine myself as any of them? Could I be a director or a producer or an editor? And I really liked photography and editing photos, but eventually in high school and college, I landed on computer graphics. So I started off my education at UC Berkeley studying computer science. And then I went on to graduate school at UPenn learning computer graphics and game technology. So far I've been at RenderMan for about 5 months. So it's actually been a relatively small journey so far, but it's been super exciting. And I love working with everyone on the team. Currently what I do is I work out of the main Emeryville campus, and I support the Pixar production teams that use RenderMan. Typical day at work is, you know, any bugs or feature requests that come in from the production teams are handled by my team, and we meet on a weekly basis to give them updates on current tasks and to prioritize any new ones.
Super cool. Sarah, can you talk a little bit about what your like typical day looks like?
Yeah.
I want to know, like, do you get your coffee? Like, do you sit down at your computer and you check your Slacks? Like, what is your order of business?
Yeah, I mean, so we have people in London as well. So we have meetings, we have stand-ups in the morning at 8:45, and sometimes meetings earlier. So usually I'll do that and then grab breakfast and stuff like that afterwards. And then, yeah, similar, depends kind of like what I have on my plate, what I'll be doing. So if I've got lots of customer support issues on the forum, I'll be looking at that and trying to diagnose. And then if it's not my area of expertise, I'll get it in a form that's useful for another engineer on the team. And yeah, planning new features if it's something like that, just like writing down in a notebook, like planning things out. Yeah, so it definitely depends on the day, but Slack messages interrupt you, and then yeah.
How is it working with like the teams and the different locations? You guys were doing that before the pandemic, but how has it been, you know, before that, Sarah, and even during the pandemic?
Yeah, so I think before the pandemic, it was like we would all, if we had a meeting with everyone, the team in Seattle and the team in Emeryville would sit in different conference rooms, and then people in London would call in. So we were using Zoom for a while, so it wasn't too much of a transition there. But yeah, lately, since the pandemic, it's been everyone on their own computer, which is kind of nice because then everyone has equal like screen space on the on calls, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. What is, just for anybody in the audience that may not know, what is a stand-up? You said you start your day off with that, with the London team.
Yeah. I can answer that one. Yeah, so we basically just, everyone on the team goes around and says what they're working on and what they worked on yesterday, what they're working on today, and then if they need help with anything. It's just a way for people to be aware of what's going on the team and help each other out if they can.
That's awesome. Megan, I know you talked a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like, but is there anything you wanted to elaborate on before we move on? Like, when do you have your breakfast? Just kidding, you don't have to answer that.
I kind of have it at the same time that Sarah does, actually. Finish our early morning stand-up and then go have breakfast after that, usually oatmeal. But aside from that, I mean, I think it's really cool that I work with the production team so closely, because any sort of like task that I'm assigned directly, I get to go work directly with those folks who say put details into that or were the ones who brought it up in the first place. And so it's always like a nice back and forth to make sure that I'm, especially if it's like a feature request too, then that I'm creating something that they want to and can be able to use in their pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So I want to know, like, what led you guys to Pixar and RenderMan? Did you guys just like walk in the door and you were here, or was there sort of like a defining moment for you past finding those names in the film credits that led you to your current roles? Let's start with you, Meghana. So you talked about your film credit perusing.
Yeah, I had somewhat of an irregular path leading up to here. After my undergrad and actually some failed attempts at getting a Pixar internship, I realized it didn't have enough experience actually to get there. And, you know, at Berkeley, we had more student-led grassroots courses to learn Maya and the animation pipeline. And of course, the one graphics CS course, but not much else. And so after undergrad, I kind of had a slight identity crisis moment, actually, because I felt that I didn't get enough graphics experience, and learning CS was hard. It was not a cakewalk. And most of the other curriculum didn't really interest me, actually. But I still really liked the fundamentals. So I ended up becoming a product manager at Microsoft. So a total 180, not working in graphics whatsoever. I was doing Windows compatibility. But, you know, I wasn't ready to give up on like my lifelong dream just yet. I knew I needed a more solid graphics education. And so that's why I went to grad school at UPenn. And after that, that led me to actually, ironically, back again at Microsoft, but this time working on a physics engine at Havoc. So that was really good experience and kind of like my first step into the industry, albeit on the game side. And then from there, I came over to RenderMan.
That's awesome. Was there any like scripting languages that you, I don't know, were sort of drawn to, or that you think helped get you the job?
I think definitely what I learned during my graduate school, there was a lot of good fundamental courses about learning rendering from the ground up and just kind of learning the basics from there, learning ray tracing and path tracing. And of course, everything that I've learned so far is mostly C++. And I think a lot of graphics is kind of rooted in that. So I'd say learning those fundamentals is probably really important. And there's a lot of resources online as well, though. You could find there's like the one textbook, we call it PBRT. That I would say is like, if you want to learn graphics or rendering, go read PBRT. It's physically based rendering techniques, I believe. Just Google it, you'll find it. There's a version of it or like an edition of it that's online for free. You'll learn so much from that.
That's awesome. Hopefully everybody wrote that down. Sarah, same question to you. What led you to RenderMan?
Yeah, okay, so like way back, I always liked art and drawing and that kind of thing. And was interested in animation, loved watching movies, same as Meghana there. But my parents, of course, were like, you can't get a job in art, so you're smart, do something else. So they kind of encouraged me to go into engineering or something like that. So I ended up applying for the electrical engineering program at UW because it was like the one I had the most credits that I could do. But I liked that a lot. But one of the prerequisites or like early classes you had to take was computer science class. It was in Java, that language. It was just easy and fun, and I was like, oh, you can do anything with this. You can make anything, and it's quick. Like there's no wires you have to hook up to make something that's cool and usable. And so that kind of hooked me on that. And when I was in the program there, I always kind of still had this like idea of animation as something I might be interested in. And they have an animation capstone at UW where you get to make a short film. You get to learn how to use everything in Maya and learn the basic pipeline, and then make a short film the rest of the year. And so that just really kind of hooked me, and I was like, yeah, there's nothing else I want to do, because you get to learn about just working with people collaboratively and people from different disciplines. And yeah, then I was like, okay, yeah, that's where what I gotta do.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. It seems like you both kind of had this art background, Meghana with like your photography, and then Sarah, you said you were interested in art. Do you think that like helps play a role in your daily like work at RenderMan? Am I just digging down the wrong path here?
I don't do as much photo editing as I would like to these days, but I think it did spark kind of that, like Sarah touched upon, that artistic side, plus combining it with like math and science, which was also another interest that we had. And of course, well, you know, like we got to put food on the table idea that encourages us to go into engineering. But no, I think it was kind of like an early inspiration, aside from, of course, looking at so much content on television. And it definitely works that side of the brain a little bit more. Although I do wish I would do it more often. I think now I stare more code than I do photos.
Yeah, I mean, it is fun that like we're making pictures, so you at least get to see something. And when you're making test scenes and stuff, it's a little bit of creativity in there. But it is, yeah, mostly coding. But you know that it's for a bigger goal. So
yeah.
I will add, actually, like I touched upon a little earlier, how a lot of the other courses I took in my computer science curriculum didn't really interest me. And, you know, learning CS was hard. C++ was my worst language until I got to grad school and I did like a proper graphics course, like learning things ground up. I felt like that was a total 180 for me. It gave me motivation to be confident in myself again, to learn CS, to what I thought was like the hardest, like you're going to the deep end, right? Like it's not only just C++, it's all this like linear algebra math and all this crazy stuff. And it seems really daunting at first, but honestly, at the end of the day, what made me so motivated to do it is because I'd say it's like the one kind of avenue for computer science where that feeling that you get at the end where you actually have a visual representation of your code, like immediately you make one change and you see it as an image on your screen, that was so gratifying and so just motivating at the end of the day. Aside from, you know, maybe some other disciplines, I felt that I didn't get that similar motivation from writing my code. You know, I don't want to look at a terminal all day. I want to produce a nice, pretty image at the end of the day. That looks way more cool.
That's so cool. I feel like that leads us well into the next question about, you guys probably work on really cool projects. What's been one of your favorite projects you've ever worked on and why?
I'll go first on this one. I think one of my favorite things that we did as on the RenderMan team was the RenderMan 22 effort. We were focusing on live rendering and getting everything live, being able to move anything, change anything during the render. And it was just really rewarding on multiple levels. We got to every level was changing of RenderMan. So like from the core up through the bridge product, Katana that I was working with. So it was very collaborative, lots of talking to everyone on the team because everything was always changing. And then you also get constant feedback because this geometry couldn't move yesterday and today it can. And yesterday we couldn't edit camera properties and today we can. And it's very, I mean, you had to physically move things and watch them change in live in the viewport. And it was just very fun to see the things change so quickly. So that was definitely my favorite project so far.
In my relatively short tenure so far, I'd say one of the assignments that has been really cool to work on is actually, it was a feature request from one of the production teams, and it was to add this certain technique, this camera technique to our camera code, essentially. And it was this concept of a split diopter. And it's like a specific lens that is used in filmmaking that allows you to have two different focal depths at the focal distances at the same time. And so I had to try and add it into RenderMan. And what was really cool about this assignment in particular, I think it was one of the most just like end-to-end tasks that I had to work with. And what I mean by that is I talked to so many different people along the way in order to build this, right? Like one person from like a specific tools group, I think, requested it, or one of the tools production teams requested it. But aside from talking to them, you know, there were other folks from other tools teams and other production teams that I had to work with to really figure out like what is the use case for this feature, like how exactly do they want it to be used for the specific production that they asked it for. And it even led me to talking to folks all the way like up to the director of photography, which I thought was really cool because, you know, I never thought I'd be able to interface with folks like that. I thought I'd interface with mostly like a lot of technical folks and a lot of folks in the rendering studio production teams. But I think this one in particular was really awesome, and really seeing the direct effect it had on the specific production shots was really cool too.
That's cool. And ties back to your love of cameras or photography. So as a software engineer, it seems like people can spend a lot of time just like focusing on their own projects, and, you know, it can feel a little bit isolating. Like, what are ways that you guys or even people on your teams have found ways to connect with each other, especially in the past, 16 months, however long it's been? Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, I think it's been honestly pretty hard to work during the pandemic and working remotely. There's been some good things, like with, like I was saying, I guess earlier, with being able to have everyone on the same page on the Zoom screen, have everyone be there. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot more Slack communication than there was before as well. But it definitely has been hard not being able to just, you know, hop over to someone else's desk and say, oh, I have a question. What do you think about this? I just want to bounce some ideas off of you. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
To piggyback on Sarah, definitely, I think people have been utilizing Slack so intelligently in the last year and a half, and now we'll continue on. But I think another, especially because I started this role in the pandemic, so I don't even know what it's like really to collaborate with these folks in person. And at first, honestly, I never found it to be weird, actually. I kind of feel like the camaraderie on the team was so amazing that it kind of felt like I had always known these people. And folks are always so available on Slack to ask any questions, and they're like immediately available to help you out. And you really get the sense of that there's no judgment. I think one of the biggest things that's a little scary, especially as someone who's new and has never met any of these people in person, is you can't really judge how they're reacting to the things that you ask. And so that makes you nervous as a person, just to think about, well, I hope this isn't a dumb question. But I think folks here have been so amazing to really show that there are no stupid questions. You know, it's okay to fail. The point of being on a team is that everyone supports each other. And they'll do it in so many different ways. Like it's just, it's been really amazing to work with all of these folks.
I also started in the pandemic here, and I ask a lot of what I think are probably stupid questions. So I also feel like the real support people have for just, you know, your inquisitiveness here and just helping people learn. A leaf blower again. There was a leaf blower in like the first talk. Sarah, I wanted to let you settle in from your leaf blower, but also ask, has there been any benefits for you with the pandemic and the way the studio works, especially since you're, you know, not the Emeryville like location?
Yeah, for sure. I've been collaborating a lot with the USD team at the studio lately, and it's been like, so pre-pandemic, I just started working with them, and I was the only one who was remote that was part of this collaborating team. And so I would be like wheeled in on like a computer, someone would carry the computer in. And now it's just like everyone's on Zoom. And so that's kind of nice. I've also been able to participate in more like fun studio things that I wasn't before. Like there's a Pixar Reading Buddies thing where they like read to kids. And I couldn't do that before because I wasn't in Emeryville, but now everyone, the schools are online, so I got to do that. Got to do some like classes through Pixar University that we have. So I've definitely felt closer to the studio than I did before. So there are positives, yes.
I love that you got to read to the kids. What are some of the most fun or memorable moments that you guys have had working at RenderMan specifically? You don't have to think about your whole life.
Oh man, we'd be all day then. I'd say actually one of the most memorable things that I can think of was kind of week 1 and day 2 really for me, because that the week that I started, ironically, was also kind of this transition time between the team having just finished releasing or like working towards the end of releasing RenderMan 24 and to the studio. And also they were doing a lot of just like reflections back on the past year, how, you know, different processes they had implemented worked or maybe didn't work as well. And it was just kind of like this whole like team discussion. And so this way I really got to meet everybody somewhat holistically and a little intensely, because we were all divided into these working groups and we were all working together to figure out like better ways to improve some of these processes and ways we communicate and collaborate with teams. And I ended up leading one of these working groups as well, which was ironic because I was the newest hire and I was the person who knew the least, but having the team give me that kind of opportunity was such an amazing time to learn everything, or learn at least so much, not everything, but learn so much in just a short span of time. And having that kind of responsibility was, you know, it made me a little nervous, but it made me really motivated and encouraged.
It's super encouraging too, like having just started in the team, really believing you to like be such a big participant in that. I don't know, probably made you feel like immediately involved in the team. Sarah?
Yeah, for me, SIGGRAPHs are always fun because we all get to fly down or up or anywhere all together and spend time as the whole team, which is unusual because we're all in different locations. So it's one of the few times that we get to have bonding activities. One time we went curling as a fun activity. That was pretty fun. And then I guess one thing I really enjoyed is at SIGGRAPH, we used to have a booth where we would pass out the walking teapots. And there would just be a line all the way down, all around the exhibit hall, I guess. And so that only was a thing for my very first SIGGRAPH, but it's super cool just seeing so many people excited for this teapot that I didn't know existed before. And one time, so we would never hand those out, outside of the certain line times where people would have to line up. But someone came up to me and he was like, "Oh, do you have a teapot?" And I said, "Oh no, I don't have one. We're only passing them out at the certain times." He said, and another coworker was there too, and luckily he looked at this person's name tag and saw that it was Martin Newell, the inventor of the Utah teapot. And so we were like, "Oh, okay, I guess we'll give you a teapot." So I got a picture and gave him a teapot. So I mean, it's just fun meeting people from the industry and learning about the history and seeing those giants in real life. So fun stuff.
I love that. Thank goodness he was wearing his name tag.
I know. Thank goodness my coworkers good at history.
Yeah, that would be good too. So do you guys find fulfillment and purpose in your work? I feel like this is a conversation I'm hearing a lot in podcasts and articles that I'm reading. And has this shifted for you at all, like during your career? Let's start, Sarah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I get a lot of fulfillment just through solving problems. I mean, that's kind of what engineering is. Like someone has something that they want to have done and you get to make that happen. So it's really fulfilling when you can make it happen, and especially fulfilling when someone comes back and says thank you. And I have to say that like throughout my career, I think things have changed slightly where I've started finding more fulfillment in the planning stages, just gathering information from the different users who want things, just to make sure that I'm making a feature that will last a long time and be actually wanted and used. So.
That's cool. Always say thank you.
Yeah, kind of ditto to Sarah, really. I just, especially working now, supporting the production teams, it's amazing and absolutely fulfilling to hear the thank you at the end of the day for the work that you've done, and to really see the effect of what you've done. Like even to just today morning, I had gotten a thank you from one of the folks on these studio teams, and they said that the work I did, I think it was adding like kind of like a warning or error message in a particular place in case assets weren't configured in a certain way. That saved them apparently from some random crashes they were getting. And that getting that at the end of the day, it's like, whoa, you really see the impact of your work taking place. Like, and when you see the films at the end of the day, knowing how much time and effort you put in to help alongside everyone else in the production and in the studio to make that a success is really just a memorable and very fulfilling moment at the end of the day. And of course, seeing your name in the credits, because who doesn't like that?
That's awesome. Was Luca your first Pixar credit?
No, because I think I was too early. It was like one shot in particular was like one of my first assignments per se, but no, it was still too early for me. So I think maybe the next film will be my hopefully first credit.
Got it. What was your first film credit, Sarah?
My first was Finding Dory. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I started right before Inside Out came out. So that was my first rap party, Pixar rap party. But yeah, Finding Dory's the first credit.
So we're going to go back a little bit to before you guys were working at RenderMan. What made you excited to apply there, and just got you really excited about the job that you were being considered for?
Should I go first? Okay, I'll go first. I mean, I guess touching back on what I had mentioned earlier, right? Like until I came upon learning graphics and rendering, CS was still, kind of this, I loved the logic behind it, but it was hard and it wasn't as interesting until I came to that point. And so, I mean, RenderMan was kind of like one of those easy no-brainers that, of course, I would try and apply at RenderMan, because that's kind of exactly what I would want to be doing, working on a rendering engine. It took I had kind of like a pinball route to get there, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of the experiences I brought from my past, experiences at college or in other jobs really helped me to get here where I am today.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I realized that I wanted to work in animation and was always inspired by Pixar movies. And so it was kind of just, that was what made me want to specifically work for Pixar over another studio.
Awesome. So we have all these great open positions, including one on the RenderMan team. What advice do you have for anybody that's looking to apply and be considered for particularly the RenderMan job?
I would say, yeah, it's helpful to network and get to know people. That's kind of how I found out about RenderMan, was through meeting someone and talking to someone on the team. And so I think that's a good way to learn more about it. I recommend like that you, learn what the position is and if it's something that you're actually interested in. One of the things, piece of advice that I got really early on from someone when I was applying for jobs was like, when you're interviewing, when you're being interviewed, you're also interviewing them to find out if it's the place that you want to work. So that's the advice.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I mean, I would also, when you're looking at the job descriptions, I feel like, because this is what ended up happening to me sometimes, is like I would read all of their requirements and I would get really nervous because I didn't fulfill every one of them to the T. Or maybe sometimes, some of the language may have been vague, and this is for any job description, really. But I would say don't feel discouraged by that. If you have a strong interest in the role and a strong interest in coming to Pixar and joining RenderMan, showcase that interest, and your interest will also show in like the work that you've done. And aside from that, definitely learn PBRT if you want to come join RenderMan, I would say. But I say this because I think going back to school and getting that graphics education really helped me out a lot. But I mean, you don't necessarily have to go to graduate school to do that. There are so many resources available online. And I think there's even like a Pixar full like animation pipeline course that's out there as well. You could start there and just kind of branch off of that. And that way you can also see, what part of it really interests you.
I refer people to Pixar in a Box all the time if they don't know like animation and like what does it actually take to make an animated film, because it's just a really helpful resource out there. You mentioned getting like good relevant experience on your resume. What kind of, if you don't have the professional experience, what kind of projects did you guys do maybe in school or outside of school that you were able to add to your resume that you felt like kind of made you stand out above the rest, if any?
I mean, I don't think that my resume was super strong, but things I put on there were projects that I did in school. I put on like Ray Tracer that I had written when I was in school for my graphics class, and the short films that I'd helped with as well. So that's what I've done.
I know there's like, I feel like for folks who have been in school recently or are in school, you always hear a lot of the, you have to try and make your project stand out and do something different. And I would emphasize finding any sort of time to do that. And, sometimes it is enabled in the assignment itself. Sometimes there'll be like extra credit options that you could take advantage of. Try and take advantage of that and differentiate your projects in a way, because similar to Sarah, like even I think my like my portfolio or GitHub has my ray tracer and pat tracer stuff I did in grad school, so it shows like you have your fundamentals down, but also trying to tweak those in a way, you know, do something different, or maybe, you know, make a game. You know, I think one of the courses I had in grad school was also just like making a game in Unity and making a game in Unreal. It doesn't have to be exactly like, oh, I did this, you know, this is my path tracer exactly to the T. You know, you can try and branch out, but that uses similar fundamentals that you're still learning in graphics, because even those kind of projects will showcase that as well. And definitely like, I didn't add this on to the last question, but I also wanted to plus one what Sarah said about networking, because one of the things that really hit me joining this industry was how small, like big and small it is at the same time, because a lot of people know a lot of other people in the industry, and obviously coming to SIGGRAPH, you really see that as well. And getting that kind of interaction with other folks will really open your eyes and kind of direct you to places that, you know, you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. So definitely network and talk to as many people as you can.
Since we don't have a lot of in-person conferences going on, what kind of advice would you give to anybody who's looking to like expand their network, and even advice about how to, you know, approach those people in their network? Like, should it be like, hey, can we be friends? Can you give me a job? Or is there another tact that you would suggest?
That's kind of a hard one because I think it probably varies per person that you want to approach, like how they want to be approached. I mean, I've gotten like people coming and asking me questions on LinkedIn, and I'll like try to respond if I have time, but I'm not always the best at it. But I think there's also like we have like the RenderMan challenges if you're interested in like being the user of RenderMan, and I think that is a good way to kind of network and get to know people who are also users of RenderMan. And some people have gotten jobs from their results from that, so it can be a good way to do it without being in person.
I know a lot of folks are nervous about kind of like cold emailing or cold talking to people, but definitely just put yourself out there, because, and the way I always think about it is the worst case scenario is you get a no, or you get no response. And that at the end of the day is just like, you can move on from that and shoot at your next opportunity and try talking to somebody else. Just don't, because if you don't go and talk to the person at all, then you will never know. So don't let any of your nervousness hold you back from just, you know, sending a message on LinkedIn or emailing someone, especially in a remote world. I will say, like, one of the biggest things, you know, I'll come back to is going to SIGGRAPH, because I'd say that was one of the biggest kind of like eye openers and opportunity houses in a way for me, because SIGGRAPH really is kind of like a hub for this industry. And even though it's not in person this year, you know, being able to at least attend and jot some names down or attend talks, and being able to maybe email them or send a LinkedIn message to them afterwards and give some, you know, like directed questions. Obviously, like, hey, I need a job is probably not going to cut it, but, you know, sending a message saying like, I've looked at the job site, or I attended this talk and what you talked about was really interesting, and, you know, here's maybe some projects or some things that I've done to showcase my interest in this area. Or, you know, if you look at the careers website and you said this job sounds perfect and I would love to apply for this, and maybe you know that this person also has a similar role in that, you know, area, team, or similar role to that job description you're looking for, ask them for advice. Like, is there any way that I can enhance my resume or my portfolio, stuff like that? Just be very direct with the kind of questions that you're asking, so that way people know exactly how to help you, as opposed to like a general like, oh, you know, I'm a student in school and I'm looking for an opportunity.
And then followed by crickets. I love that, like just being inquisitive and just trying to learn more. about like this industry and the type of work in it is just so helpful, and it'll just lead you down a lot of different paths, hopefully ones that you're passionate about. So my last question that I have for you guys kind of falls in line with this, but what is the best advice that you ever got from a mentor or that you gave to a mentee?
Yeah, so I think personally, I don't know if I've ever gotten super direct advice that I remember. I know, like, I guess one thing early on that someone told me was like, we didn't have a documentation person for a moment. And so I was new on the team. So like, oh, Sarah, can you do some documentation? And my manager was like, oh, don't let them think that's your job. Like, you're a software engineer, we hired you to write code. So like, so that was good advice to like stand up for yourself, know your worth, that kind of thing. But I'll also say that like most of the advice that I've gathered or internalized has been just from watching other people on the team, seeing how they work and taking pieces of that. So like we had one person on the team who was just really good at picking up the phone and calling people up and saying, hey, how does this work? I need some help. And so that taught me like, oh, that's the thing you can do. You can just pick up the phone and call people and be quick about solving. Like, don't waste your time trying to work things out on your own, but try to get help as soon as you need it. Yeah.
Since you're working from home, do you pick up your cell phone?
Slack now. Slack. We didn't have Slack at the time, but so that's kind of taken over that.
Doesn't sound as catchy. Pick up your Slack.
Pick up your Slack.
Sounds different.
Well, that means something different. I mean, channeling or plus oneing what Sarah said, you know, don't get stuck in a rabbit hole. And that can happen in this line of work sometimes, where you're just, you know, you're kind of churning away on your task or your assignment, and you're just, and then you hit a roadblock. And this is something I'm personally overcoming, is where, you know, I have it in me more to that, you know, okay, Meghana, you need to figure this out. You have to like kind of prove yourself in a way that you can figure this out all on your own. And then you realize that, you know, a day or maybe a couple of days have passed by and you still haven't figured it out. And now you're just running behind. At that point, just go ask somebody. And almost always, whenever I've hit that point and where I've realized, oh, you know, I go ask somebody and then they just tell me the answer, or they direct me to someone, or give me some sort of like clue if they don't know the answer, but it helps me get to the answer. It always happens so fast. And then I'm like, dope, I should have just asked earlier. Why didn't I do that? So don't fall into a rabbit hole. Advice number one. But alongside what Sarah said, you know, there isn't some very poignant piece of advice that I've received. It's more of just a lot of good habits I've picked up along the way. You know, that not falling into a rabbit hole is one thing. That used to be like, I used to call it the 15-minute rule. If you couldn't figure it out in 15 minutes, odds are someone else knows. So just go ask someone. You can change how many minutes that is depending on the task itself, but that's kind of like a nice thing to work with. But, you know, small, simple things like how to write emails. I learned that a lot in every one of the jobs and opportunities I've had, looking at other people's emails, how, you know, direct and professional they are at doing that. Because you don't learn that in college for the most part. I don't know a course or any class that tells you how to write emails in the professional setting. You just kind of pick this up along the way. And that's how I did. I just looked at other people and other similar small things, like I have this like to-do list right on my main monitor that says, okay, these are the things you need to do today. These are the things you need to do this week. And these are the things that are maybe like longer backlog-y kind of stuff that you'll eventually get to. But, you know, that it kind of provides direction for me. And that was something I picked up from a coworker at one of my last jobs. So just you pick up small things along the way that really help.
I love that. Start a little journal. We just had, we had a lot of questions in the chat, but it looks like people behind the scenes are answering them really well. But this one seemed like something I could answer. For anybody who's interested in internships, whether it's for RenderMan, Storyboard, or any like art departments, wondering what might help you get noticed by the teams. I think it's pretty broad because those are a lot of different topics, and Sarah and Meghana, feel free to hop in for your teams if you have any advice. But having a lot of like focused and initiative in one area, especially since in this industry there's a lot of specialization and it's really hard to get really good at one area. So I think if you can like find one area that you're interested, let's say it's, you know, building tools, and you kind of work with 3D artists to build those tools, or if it's storyboarding, you have a focused like storyboard portfolio. I don't know how many storyboard artists are in here, but trying to find that focus and just showing your passion, and if that can come through in your portfolio and also in your resume, I think that helps you to stand out a lot. Do you guys, either of you, have any perspective on that?
Yeah, I'll just agree with you. Like, I get a lot of the requests that I get on LinkedIn for people asking like, oh, I want a job at Pixar and I want to work in this other field that's not really related to me. It's like, or they want to do it all, you know? And Pixar is pretty specialized, the different positions that are there. Yeah, pick one.
Yeah, I think just plus oneing both of you, it's definitely worth it to spend the time and show your originality and creativity in a particular area, which is a lot harder to do if you kind of stretch yourself thin over a lot of areas. And there are so many different areas that you can tap into. But being able to really maximize on that and to show your interest, I think, is the key thing to focus on.
Yeah, and if that interest leads you to a different interest, like through a winding path, it's okay to follow that path too. But you should love what you do. That's also good. Well, that is all of our questions and everything. Thank you, Sarah and Meghana, so much for sharing all about you. I had the easy part up here because you guys are just so wonderful. So if you guys are inspired and interested in learning more about our open positions, you can check out our open positions right here. You can go apply today, check out our open positions, follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, because we post open positions there all the time and also other interesting stuff. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming.